So while the panel's getting situated, ladies and gentlemen, this handsome gentleman, Nir Schlein.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We are so happy to see so many familiar faces after such a long time. So I'm Nir Schlein from Badgelcode, a games developer based in South Korea with presence in Israel and other places. And let's start with a quick intro. Guys, go ahead. Would you like to intro yourself?
Thanks, Nir. I'm Joseph. I'm from Personally. We're a programmatic DSP based here in Israel. I've been with Personally for 5 years. I lead the product team for our ML, basically, working a lot with the data scientists. And before that, I've been 5 years in the desktop, the Israeli download valley. So I've been around EdTech for a bit. And yeah, thanks, Nir. Let's hope we have a great panel.
Hi all, I'm Bella. I'm a COO at Mobupps. All the teams here, hi. Mobupps is leading 3 platforms. One is mobile platform. Second one is, I'm sorry, I'm nervous. I'm sorry.
Hi everyone, my name is Ziv. I'm a client solutions manager at Facebook Gaming, now Meta. With me, Facebook Gaming. And I basically manage support game developers in EMEA and Israel in their user acquisition journey on our platform. And before that, I used to work in game development, like in a gaming company, as a UA manager and UA team lead.
Hi everyone, I'm Pedro from Sciplay. Lots of known faces here, as you can see. Sciplay is a game developer, mainly on social casino, founded in 2008. Leading on social casino, but expanding also for casual, hyper casual, on many offices around the world. Happy to be here.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Let's try that again. Good morning. Good afternoon, actually. I'm Matan from Snapchat Israel. I joined the team last year in October. Essentially, I am the new business lead in Israel, so I work with our next generation of Snapchat advertisers in terms of onboarding and supporting and ensuring that we build for the platform. Previous to that, I spent a bit of time at TikTok. Previous to that, some time in influencer marketing and some time at an ad tech platform. And the accent is from South Africa. I recently moved to Israel about a year ago, and it's a pleasure to be on this panel. Let's hope it's a good one.
Amazing, amazing. So we have great people for an amazing variety of companies, and let's get to it. Let's start from the unavoidable question: what did it change in the ecosystem for UA in the last since the last time that we saw each other face to face?
Yeah, it works. Yeah. So the elephant in the room. So basically, who's ever been in EdTech for long, he knows like the bigger platforms have a tendency of killing business for everyone, right? We just had WWDC like a couple of weeks ago. And I think everyone is kind of shaking in the positions about how measurement's going to look like, right? Because ever since iOS 14.5 came out, people were starting to talk about, not having the user and attribution changed, and everyone since then went to probabilistic, but now the future is uncertain. And most people are adjusting, trying to plan what they can do. Eventually it's going to happen in Android as well, right? So people are thinking about that in the future, right? I think nothing else significant really is going on, right? I mean, that's like where everyone is trying to understand how they're going to measure stuff moving forward. And as a DSP, we basically have to be very agile and adapt to whatever comes, right? The transition to probabilistic was pretty smooth. Scan is a mess. 4.0 is cute at best. So we'll see where the wind blows. But we'll be there to, take the blows from Apple, Android, whoever, and we'll figure it out. Because that's what edtech people do, I guess, right? Roll with the punches.
Yeah, I completely agree with what Joseph said. I think unanimously the iOS 14 changes and the privacy regulations and policies are evolving as we speak, and they basically changed and shuffled all the cards in terms of how we manage UA and how we run campaigns, and it's from all the way up to, it affects all the way up from budget allocation, channel measurement, and up until tactical UA strategies like creative testing and so on. So really the entire industry has been pretty much shuffled, and this is probably going to, I believe that this change and this trend is probably going to continue, as Android will probably follow in Apple's footsteps, and we'll see some other adjustments to scan and the other privacy changes that will follow.
Totally. I think if I can add a few things, I totally agree and second everything that's been said. I think it's also affected us as platforms in the sense that there's been a loss of signal, but I also think there's a massive opportunity in what's actually going on in the fact that there's loss of measurement. I think it takes us back to bring a bit of the magic back into advertising, into UA, and to really start to lean into creative and to building for platforms. Of course, we have to learn completely over again how that will look and how to actually plan for this future of measurement. But I think there's still a lot of opportunity to actually capitalize on what it is that's going on, and we'll obviously elaborate on a few of these things as we go along. So it's not all doom and gloom, is what I'm saying.
Good point, good point. And Pedro, as the representative of the advertisers, like how are you accommodating these changes?
So there's a few ways, but most important, you need to know your customers. You have to know who you're approaching to. You need to tailor your creatives to reach out to them the best way as you can. And of course, this evolves with time, as all the platforms do. You need to, on the same way, you need to work really closely with the platforms or the media suppliers, whoever it is, very closely, because the same way you judge the activity on a new way with all the changes, they are also evolving. They're also changing their algorithms, changing the way they provide you the same media and what they can do with it. So you need to, it's a both ways learning all the time. And lastly is be super connected to the product, because the product nowadays, I think they have a very meaningful insight to all the activity that you have on the UA, meaning that with data loss, we rely on their feedback way more than we were before.
Good stuff, good stuff. And let's say, for example, now that we have less data, right, it's said that we are focusing more on creative. How does a successful creative strategy looks like nowadays?
So I think the creative strategy is way more complex than what it was before, because it's not only about creating the most innovative ad that you can, which is also important. It's also important to be aware what happens on the industry, on the competitors, and also on the product to know your next USP and things like this. But you also need to test a lot of creatives to see what's the best approach. But the most important thing is having a good methodology and a testing framework, because you need to be very active on testing as much as you can, but also very active of knowing when to not continue with the testing and identifying quickly your next winner. And that's the most important. And of course, the sharing knowledge, both from who's living on the KPIs, let's say the UAs that are at the forefront of the activity, they're the first ones to share what's happening on the activity, and they're also receiving lots of feedbacks from stakeholders on the company, from the product, and knowing how to adapt on the both ways.
How it looks like from the media side, guys?
Yeah, if I may, I think just to add to that point, I think relevance in creative has become even more important now that we're missing some of these signals. I think there's been a shift over the kind of last a decade or so, in terms of creative. We've seen, the classic branded type of content. We're now in a phase of native UGC style content where we're actually creating genuine experiences that fit into the platform where people are being served. So I think a very important point is to, there's no one size kind of fits all within the digital marketing space. It's really one, obviously understanding who your audience is, understanding how you want to communicate that product, but also understanding the platform that you're advertising on, and showing up in a novel way, but also showing up in a way that's extremely native, relevant, and will be well received in the mindset that that person comes into that app. There's a whole host of different channels that we now use as people in our daily lives, and we arrive at those platforms for totally different reasons and with totally different mindsets. So understanding that mindset, understanding how to create and build for that and be novel within that experience, I think is super important from a creative point of view.
Yeah, I completely agree with what Matan said. I also think that now with the loss of signals, so we will probably see, I assume we will see, we won't have the luxury of only focusing on low funnel events as precisely as we're doing now. And we will likely see a shift into more creatives with stronger brand identity in them. This is something that I think we'll probably see in the upcoming era. And also, I think diversity is key. I think, as Pedro mentioned, we want to reach as many people as we can and tap into different user motivations in our creative. So really find the most distinct, test different and distinct creative motivations, creative ideas. I think this will probably be a necessity for going forward.
Yeah, and on the DSP side, I can attest to everything related to the variety. Basically, eventually, when we're working with a platform like Meta or Snap, or anything that's led by machine learning, they do the creative selection for you. And they do a pretty damn good job because they understand either the user profile or the cohort profile, and they correlate it with features from the creative, right? So this way, just by generating enough variety, and when I talk about variety, I don't necessarily talk about, a different color scheme. Changing the CTA color is like old tech. But, showing different motivations, showing something even extremely different in your test is something that we see work, something you can't necessarily explain. So as long as you have someone on the other side who knows what he's doing with this creative, go crazy. The more the variety is better. In programmatic specifically, you have a lot of rewarded inventory. There you can go longer. You should do that because you have a better opportunity to expose, the uniqueness of your game, right? And just make sure to do that. And obviously, everyone here is doing that, looking at, ads themselves, seeing the trends, seeing like the messaging that works. I mean, when I play games, all I see all the time now is people shaking inside the room, right? That's like a part of a lot of creatives right now. It's working, it's converting. People like that sentiment of people in distress, right? That's kind of a weird thing, but again, we're weird people in a weird industry. So follow the trends, work with variety, and yeah, you should be good.
All right, ride the trend, ride the wave. Now, nowadays, how do you guys measure? How does effective measurement and tracking looks in 2022?
Who's brave enough to take that one?
I think I can start maybe. I think first of all it's good to put all the cards on the table and say that there's no final answer at the moment, and the measurement of privacy-centric activities is still ongoing, and there is no one clear answer on this, I think. But I think everyone who does UA understands that the current activity, the current measurement methodology is becoming less and less accurate, and it will probably become less and accurate as we move on. So we recommend, what we think of it as in the next privacy era, to add additional layers of measurement in addition to attribution, which becomes less and less accurate. So whether it will be marketing mix modeling or experiment with geolifts and everything, and we will probably use all of these different measurement solutions combined in order to see the bigger picture. We will not be able to afford using only one methodology, the same language that we used to talk, which is attribution, but we'll have to layer it, and we can't stay behind, especially as we will probably see this privacy trend going forward.
If I can only add to that, I think let's say the first step you need to do to understand measurement is accept what's happening now. You need to embrace it, the changes are there, and this is what you have to deal with it. If you're still on the denial phase, you're not going to learn, you're not going to innovate, you're not going to actually know how to work with it. So that's, for me, the first thing. And as I manage the platforms with social, and I know that that's what it is on those, I'm just giving a context, like probabilistic is still trying to overcome on a different way what's happening on the scan. So again, like I'm working very closely with all the platforms to try to understand how they're dealing with it. And then on the data side, we need to work very closely with the data team, invest on a new analysis and building new KPIs, and know how the KPI that you're measuring, if it's going to affect on the lift that is going to bring to the product, which action is going to bring the next incremental value to your app. But that's how it's going to look. But we need to throw ourselves in the water and work with it.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think I have a couple of even some rudimentary examples of actually how, you know, use cases that we use to provide more signals. So I think firstly that mindset needs to really change, and we need to be open to experiments that could even be as rudimentary as putting, you know, coupons on a piece of creative and measuring the true uplift of that, because we know that we have a loss of signal. That, of course, is not a long-term hack. It may be something just to prove what exactly the uplift is, or, you know, what is the gap between the signals we do have to the actual conversions that are happening on our site. Things like measuring halo effect within the app. Again, I think these are not long-term solutions. I think these are essentially hypotheses that we create, we test, and then, you know, give it enough statistical significance to build our own models. And when I say our own, I'm speaking from the advertiser side, to build models that we can start to measure things. Of course, they're not going to be 100% accurate. These are much more longer-term type of models that we need to build. And secondly, I think there's also a lot of data that you guys as advertisers are sitting on from the past. I think modeling that data, understanding how to use that historical data to really predict, analyze, and kind of measure what it is that we can. And really, I think also the key is patience. We became very spoiled as advertisers in the sense that we had instant signals and we could do things pretty instantly down to a very, very granular level. That's obviously gone. So LTV modeling and all these types of longer-term data analyses would be much more beneficial to us. It's obviously a massive shift in mindset, but I think it's key.
I'm actually going to be an optimistic here, which is like, as I said earlier, the scan 4.0 is like a step in the right direction. Obviously, it's not really enough to be close to deterministic, and by design, it will never be. And that's, I guess, fine. But I think the real reason probabilistic existed so far and keeps living is the fact that I think Apple kind of understood that they were a bit too aggressive, because they have skin in the game for both sides, right? So on acquisition, they want to increase the Apple search ads volume, but they also, of course, generate a third of all the IAP revenue, right? And UA drives IAP. People invest money in apps organically, obviously, but UA drives that up significantly. And I think they understood that without allowing advertisers to work in the way they knew so far, pretty much, eventually their bottom line would decrease. And of course, with companies like Apple, we're talking about huge bottom lines. This is why I think Google are going to do it much differently, right? A, they're taking a lot more time to do it. They said in advance it's going to be like 2.5 years, guys. We still don't know how it's going to look like. We're going to figure it out as we go. They communicate with advertisers about this. They understand the needs. And they already have much more skin in the game on the acquisition side because of AdMob, right? So I think the balancing act of obviously giving the users better experience and dealing with privacy needs to happen. But I think Google's going to do it in a different way. Again, this is very optimistic. They can just, release Google Scan or whatever, but we'll see what happens. And as a DSP, as anyone in this industry, like everyone said, you have to be agile, and you have to have this mindset of acceptance. We joked about this earlier. It's like the 5 stages of grief, last one being acceptance. You should be there as soon as the platform says you should be there, right? Like anyone that did web before knows that the Chrome changes killed so many, you just need to be used with it, and like I said before, roll with the punches. But I'm an optimistic. I'm keep contradicting myself. But it's 2022, COVID's gone. Is it gone? Who knows, right?
I guess that if you leave aside, right, if you don't want to like the accuracy that you had before in UA, and we enter in a framework that is more similar, let's say, to ASO, A/B testing, incrementality, then actually it seems to be a world where it will look like much more as what we know from ASO. And in that sense, guys, how do you relate to the custom product pages that Apple has released, Google announced?
Well, if I can start on that, I think that's a big step for us, also on the UA side. First of all, it makes the work closer to the ASO team, which was way apart before. So the journey that user takes from seeing the first ad and clicking on it, landing on the landing page that we want him to, makes the experience different. And that's what we look for, because when on gaming, we're looking for cohorts that go like 2-3 months ahead. Everything has a start. And the start is from the first ad that he clicked on, the fatui, like the experience on the first few days, and everything. And this is crucial also for UA, the CPPs. I think it's a big step for us to try to leverage it, test it. Of course, on the social side, it's not there yet. There's a pioneer yet here in the room, I think, that we can start testing, but it's on early stages, on baby steps. We're gonna get there. But I see the teams on the company already testing it, and it's a massive thing that is super important that they're already taking ahead, and it's gonna be something very important for both teams, both ASO and UA together.
Yeah, on the programmatic side, I can say that, again, with machine learning, there's a lot of information you can extract from the App Store description, right? I mean, categories are easily manipulated by ASO people. That's like a hobby. You want to jump in the chart, so let's change a category. And that can create a mess if you're working with this data for your machine learning decisions, right? So changes in the actual text that are massive can really break things when you're talking about programmatic, because basically what we do is we take the store text and we turn it into a vector, and this way we can measure contextual relationships between apps. That's like our iOS approach now, where you don't have the user, right? You need to take the context that you have right now and you need to maximize it. So the idea is to take the actual keywords that relay what the user is actually going to do, other than just like a category, because casino can say a million things and cards can say a million things. But the specific mechanics, the specific themes that are inside need to be considered in order to find a really good match. And I would just say don't go too crazy, because I think like maybe even what we saw with fake ads, with fake gameplay and all the regulation around that, maybe would even happen with text, because again, people in UA, in ASO, whatever, they're gonna take this to the maximum, and they're going to message it in a way that just converts slightly better, and they can go crazy if you don't put reins on them. So I guess go on the safe side is like my tip, and be aware that that data is used for your benefit programmatically.
Hi, guys. So I think that speaking about changes is the core of user acquisition, because the strong ones survive. Today you can see and you can look back and you can see that almost all of the companies, the biggest companies, they collapsed because they weren't so open to changes and they weren't ready to the changes. So first of all, you need to be one step ahead and always understand the industry and always look at what is going to happen and be aware of it and try to be proactive about it. When it comes to ASO, this is the core of user acquisition, because understanding what affects the users to be more active in the app and more to bring the advertiser the actual results that he's looking for, because nowadays nobody is really bringing you something new. Nobody will actually bring you a user that you would say, okay, this company is really special. But what differentiates the companies among another is the fact that they really examine and understand their clients' needs, and they understand and evaluate every step that they make. For example, the whole idea of ASO is to take a keyword or something that somebody... I'm really sorry, guys.
It's okay, Yuela, go ahead.
Understanding the core of your users, to know what they're interested of and to target those users, this is what actually is bringing the advertising world to a peak. And once we are adjusted and once we know how to be ready to these changes and we are ready for them, this is when we bring our advertisers the actual value, because all of us do the same, more so. But to actually purchase users that are appropriate to the advertiser itself, and they bring results to the app, and they bring ROIs, and they bring lifetime users, this is basically what the industry is about. Yeah.
I just want to add one final point to that. So I think it again gives us another opportunity and more signals to actually test. This has obviously been going on in web for quite a while in terms of landing page optimization and landing page testing. There's a great talk that really changed my career by Booking.com in terms of how many experiments they actually run on the back end on these landing pages. So I think if we're talking about landing in the App Store and testing a whole bunch of different types of landing pages and creatives, again, it's more signal, it's more ability to test. I think maybe the caution that I kind of may have noticed there is not to test too many things at once, and we then lose sight of what is it that is actually moving the needle. But I think it's a great opportunity and more signals.
And now that some part of the signals are lost and that we are in a world, right, that the line between paid and organic has squashed, do you guys see more affluence of, for example, influencers marketing, branding?
Sure. If I may, yes, I think the uptake has definitely been super significant. I think I was probably one of the biggest non-believers a couple of years ago in terms of influencer marketing, and I didn't really understand the place of it. I think it's become a tool for word of mouth at scale. It's become a tool to really create creative at scale, genuine creative, native creative. I kind of, when I speak to some of the advertisers that I'm onboarding at Snap, I try and create one key element or one differentiator, and I kind of say show up as a friend on Snapchat, because we arrive on Snapchat to speak with friends and family. And so the use of creators, the use of influencers is the current kind of shift within the creative sphere. The uptake is super significant. There's a ton of different platforms out there to source, to manage, and to kind of discover these creators. So I think it's key going forward. But again, I also think it's key to understand what it is that we're doing with these creators for the specific platforms and how to show up on those platforms in the most relevant and native way.
Yeah, I completely agree with what Matan's saying. We also see like a very big influx of using of influencer marketing, and it become more prevalent across all vertical, basically, specifically also gaming. And I think this really touches on what was previously said in this panel, to match the importance of matching the platform that you're running UA on with the users, and picking the right influencers and putting them in the right ads and the right placements and the right channels, media channels, is key to really optimize your creative efficiency. And this is something that we see across the board, gaming specifically, but across all genres, basically.
When we look at the influencer market, I think that it's really similar to what we're doing right now. At the moment, people are targeting by ages, by gender. This is by far the most targeted audience you can get, because if, for example, I'm trying to publish a sports app or something similar to that, so I will choose an influencer that is doing something important in sports. And by that, you're targeting by far the most targeted users, and you're receiving more audience that is relevant to your app or to your site. And influencers market is something really strong that a lot of people are thinking on going in right now, because the targeting over there is much more focused. And when people look at people that they chose to follow, and not at a product or an ad that somebody just, showed them and they have to either choose to press or not. Here they're looking at somebody that they admire, that they would like to copy, or they like what they do, they like their hobbies, and they actually go ahead and they go from a choice and download the app. So it's really a targeted market, and it's not that different from what we're doing right now. It's just a different way of publishing. But the targeting itself.
No, I didn't mean
Good
to
stuff.
cut you off. I remember being a gamer, just to build on your story about like bad influencer marketing is hilarious and it can kill companies. There was this video game, like a shooter. I'm a gamer, I used to watch a lot of Twitch back then. They used Snoop Dogg. I forget his recent name, Lion. I'm a big fan, don't get me wrong. He basically was playing a game, and it was obvious that he's not really playing it. He had a video in the background of and he's like communicating with people in parallel and smoking a blunt and not really doing anything, and like the character is still moving. And like it was horrible. Like the chat was basically people just saying like, we know he's not playing the game. That's like an extreme example, but just being on YouTube, being on the platforms, you see so many examples of like, okay, let's do influencer marketing. Let's take this guy that has a following and give him a product that has nothing to do with him at all, and then you just burn money. So it's the other example is like PewDiePie, like maybe one of the biggest ever. He did this campaign back in the day, like 2019, with it's this music game, I forget, but we looked at the numbers, like what he drove there, the global volume of installs that he drove to that game. It was a game from Cheetah, was insane. When you do it right, when the creator believes in the content and he knows how to message it correctly and he builds it for his audience, amazing. But that takes a lot of work and people are lazy. So most of the time you see Snoop Dogg smoking a plant with a video game in the background. So just, again, be careful. Do it, but be very careful. Plarium do amazing things.
Do you want to add
One point. I totally agree, and I think that we can see all the platforms are leaning in. We've launched a creator marketplace, and I think lean into the platforms. Most of the platforms will have creator marketplaces. What those allow you to do is to tap into super users of the platform, people who understand how to use that platform. And to the Snoop Dogg point, we've all seen the shift from these mega influencers, celebrity-like people, to nano, micro, and again, more trusted type of influencers and creators. And again, tap into the platforms that are available, the creator marketplaces that are available to you. And I think it really just does reinforce the amount of trust that we can create with the people that we're trying to acquire as users.
Great stuff. We are running out of time. We went over creative, over tracking and measurement, over ASO, organic influencers. I think that we mostly touched it all, except for maybe automation that will remain for another time. Maybe this is the time to take questions from our public.
Actually, I have a question about the creative side. All of you talked about diversify and test a lot of concepts. What is your advice to smaller companies with lower budgets about diversify? Is it about the concept? Is it about the placement itself? For example, Snap, you have lenses, but that's for more, let's say, advanced companies, later stages. What is your advice for smaller companies with lower budget? If you can share about also the ratio of winning concept. Google said once 1 to 20, today is 1 to 30.
And it's a super common kind of way of thinking that AR lenses are super hard and super expensive, and they're actually not. We've got a bunch of different features to actually build these things pretty quickly, from a self-service point of view, from available type of lenses. So that's number one. I think creators is definitely a way to scale your creative efforts without spending too much budget. So I think those are the two kind of points that I would try and put across.
Regarding your question about like budget, so this is definitely a problem for many small scale or relatively small scale businesses. Diversity is definitely an important thing, but you don't have to run all of them at once, right? You need to do it like a step by step. So you can try testing just 1 or 2 or 3 concepts, and then through the winning creative, do some iterations on those to find like the most efficient way of creative efficiency for your ad. So it doesn't have to be that you run 10 different concepts all at once, but you can do it like step by step and build on the learnings that you get from each test, and that will be more cost efficient in terms of that.
Really important tip. Know your competition, explore how they are promoting their creatives. I gave an example a couple of days ago when the guys and I spoke, that when you know your competition, how they publish their creatives, what are the colors they're publishing, who has the highest amount of installs, try to examine what is it that they're doing, what is it that failed for them, and try to use the colors that they're using, and try on keywords to use the words that are more like using, if you're, for example, publishing an app of taxi, so you can write their Uber somewhere along the way, so that when somebody is looking for Uber, he will find you also. And on creatives, always when you test one creative, give it a week or 2, and you need to see how much influence it makes, and every change that you have, you need to document it, and you need to follow it, and where you see the most outcome, this is the best creative.
That's a great point, Bella. That would be all, guys. Thank you very much to our participants. Thank you very much to our attendants.
Okay. Panelists, if you could go outside, you may get a lot of friends and new admirers.